we want to learn how to accept those parts of ourselves. Because when we're more accepting of those parts of ourselves, then we're less caring whether someone else accepts it or not. So the things that we're okay with in ourselves don't bother us in other people. The things we're not okay with is the things we worry other people are going to see in us. And really, the more we can love ourselves and embrace those parts of us, the more free we are to live our truth. And this isn't about saying we're better than anyone, but it is just about celebrating who we are as a person, because it is there to do that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Radiant Awakening. I am so excited to be joined here today with Patrick Marando. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Good, thanks, Sarah. How are you? Thanks for
Doing
having me.
great. I'm excited to have you here. So I was so excited when I got the message to have you on the show. You're a psychologist and a spiritual teacher. I'm a social worker and a chaplain, so I was just like super pumped for this conversation.
Great,
Um,
fantastic.
and I'm so excited to kind of dive into your story and how you got into both professions, and then understanding like kind of the connection between the two.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm be happy to share it and give my journey.
Absolutely. So yeah, take
So
us on that journey.
yeah, I'll start. Yeah, sure. So I started from straight from school. I started psychology straight from my high school. So it was just something I felt like a calling to do. Probably from about 15 on, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist, and I was always interested in the human mind. So I was also always interested in why, especially people around me were quite emotional, and I was quite I guess I was a stoic figure. So I sort of was really interested in understanding that. So I went to study psychology and did my degree. And about halfway through my degree, I started doing kung fu. And during kung fu, that's where I learned things about tai chi, meditation, chi energy. So we learned a lot of sort of metaphysical things there as well, not just fighting. And that got me down the spiritual road a little bit too. And from there, I just then I heard about enlightenment, and I heard it was about seeing through our conditioning. And as a psychologist, I thought, well, I have to see through our conditioning. Like, what more can there be? So I went deeper and deeper into that, and sort of had my own awakening experiences and connection to my own truth and my true self. And the more I did that, the more I started to become a spiritual teacher and psychologist. So I just blended both of them as I went, because I learnt them both generally quite simultaneously.
Yeah. You said you started realizing that you needed to come into your true self. What was that process for you? What did that look like?
Yeah. So first started like a lot of meditation just to try to understand. When I say true self, how I think of true self is our soul or our spirit. And I knew that part was there, but I was meditating a lot. And the first meditation I did was something called meditative self-inquiry. So really seeing like whenever my mind said, "Oh, I'm this or I'm that," I'd say, "Well, who's there or what's there before my mind thought something?" So I was sitting as the witness of my thoughts and witness of my body. And so I just practiced that a lot. I did that every day. I made a promise to myself that I'd meditate every day. And I did that for a year. And so I kept doing that. And then probably, but I don't know if it made a difference, but after a couple of years, I was on a train in Italy reading a book about awakening. And that's when I first awoke. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I was the awareness, not just I was Patrick noticing the awareness. And that's how it sort of came out for me.
Hey. And when you kind of woke up to that, what did you realize at that moment that you didn't know before about yourself?
Yeah. So I realized that there was no set part of me. So my spirit part of me was something that was an evolving thing. It wasn't just a set identity known as Patrick. So my body always changes, my mind, my emotions, but there was this spirit that was there, aware of all of those things. And I kind of had flashbacks to a lot of childhood events, and I was like, oh, and I was disconnected from them. I was just watching myself in them rather than actually being them.
Oh. And how did from that awakening, what changes did you see in your life?
Yeah. So from there, actually, it was quite peaceful for a very long time. I felt like I sort, I sort of describe it to people. I felt like an avatar within my body rather than my body. So So I was actually very, very peaceful. I sort of nearly felt like I was hovering around for a while. I was obviously not, but but I was just sort of feeling peace. Whatever happened, nothing, like something would happen, and I just shrug it off and say, "Oh, that's not important. It's not connected to my soul at all." So that was the first thing. The second thing though was I think I became quite disconnected as a human. So so nothing mattered then for a while, and then that created its own problem. So from there, like, well, if nothing mattered, and say someone hurt me, then I'm just getting hurt. And I needed to know how to stop that. I need my ego. You don't want to kill the ego. You want to know how to integrate the ego. And so the next part of the journey was really learning how to integrate the ego and navigate my emotional states.
Okay. And in that process, you know, what do you think changed as far as like how people related to you or how you related to others?
Yeah, I think firstly it changed that a lot of people consider me quite zen. Everyone else is very, maybe apart from my family, but everywhere else people consider me quite zen. So I wouldn't really get triggered that much. I would just brush it off. I'd say, well, just accept it. There's nothing you can do about it. I think I intellectualized a lot of things, so people would see the result of the intellectualizing. And when I finally started connected to myself even deeper than that, I think people started seeing me being maybe more argumentative, me being a huge change of my personality, because then I was integrating my emotions then. So so I'd be speaking up more, might be more assertive or more angry, or I could be more anxious than I was before. So so in that case, I went through a bit of a 180, and then finally came back to a 360, but just with better balance.
Yeah. I love how you described it being like a 180 then a 360 and finding balance, because I think sometimes when we change so drastically, it's not always, the scale tips a little bit too far, and you're talking about coming back and finding the balance of, okay, I have this authentic self and I have these emotions and I have these things, but also finding the um I also need to be kind, but I need to not argue with my mailman kind of
Right.
thing, you know? So finding that balance of like, I will be assertive, but I also, I will have my emotions, but my emotions won't run everything. So yeah, I like how you bring up that balance. You also talked about things coming back from childhood, and I have children. I have now four children. I just had my fourth month ago.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Um, one thing that I think is so interesting is my kids, who they are. Like, there's certain things about who they are that have just stayed with them, like just their core of like their authentic selves. And I've heard people talk about one of the saddest things that happens to children is when that goes away. They stop being, their authentic self because society says, okay, we need to conform. Did you find was there something about you in childhood that you had or and that you felt like you lost it and then through this awakening were able to regain, or do you feel like you kept it or it didn't quite come back, or do you have an
Yeah.
experience like that?
Yeah, so I think overall what I've discovered is that whatever I had, I never lost it. I just disconnected from it.
Mm,
And so the more I connected to myself, the more I was actually reconnecting back to those aspects of me. One for me, I'm generally quite was as a child, I was quite light-hearted, and I quite like sort of artistic things, so things like maybe drama, acting, writing. So that's one of the things that I got more into as an adult, as an older adult, I'm older, but as an adult, that just started coming back out of me again after it had been shut down for a long time by schooling and by even studying of psychology was all about getting into the mind rather than getting into the body and just living more freely.
yeah. So I hear you saying that you came into more of a creative process, that you
Yeah,
were able to be more creative from
yeah,
that place.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, and that was always in me, but it was just it just came out way more freely the more I sort of grew into myself.
Yeah. What do you think were some of the barriers to becoming your authentic self, or barriers for anyone for, be living out their authentic true self?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts when we talk about our true self. There's the recognition of who we are as as a spirit or soul. That's I think the first step. and then living that because it's not just a spirit of soul, it's a soul with, I guess, essence, and that essence is sort of gently motivating us to live. And so it's kind of knowing how to listen to that and knowing how to listen to those gentle callings to to move in the direction that feels most peaceful and most aligned with us. I think the barriers in general would be our fears and our desire to not feel certain emotions. So when we, like, so it might be like, I might want to be creative, but I might be really, really scared of what people might think. So I shut it down. Or, or it might be, I want to be someone who, says no to people and looks after myself, but I feel too guilty. So I don't let myself do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some things, I know you talked about meditation, but what are some things that we can do to kind of remove those barriers or overcome them or
Yeah.
move past them?
Yeah. And I think remove, I don't really talk about removal very often because more about the other ones, like overcoming them and working through them.
Mhm.
Because sometimes they serve us. Like sometimes it's useful to feel guilty and contemplate my actions. Sometimes it's useful to feel fear and decide, all right, maybe that isn't the right thing to do right now. Um, Generally, one thing I always suggest to people is I sort of create something called the true self breath, and and that's sort of just taking a moment to focus on yourself and sit with you and focus on the core of your being where you feel that is. Just taking 3 slow, deep breaths into that part of you. And it's just setting the intention that I want to connect to my truth right now. And and so that would just be one where it's a good, nice centering place to sort of not get rid of, but to not get so consumed by the conditioning, and you can find a little bit more clarity in.
Mm. Okay. So you talked about meditation and it sounds like breath work,
Yeah,
being able to center and find that self.
yeah.
I'm curious about, I'm a trauma therapist.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious about people who find it really hard to sit in their body because they might have a lot of trauma that they're holding or things like that. How have you seen or worked with people who might be holding a lot of that trauma in their body and find it really hard to connect to their true selves because of that?
Yeah, usually what I'll do first is I won't even touch the trauma. I won't even talk about the trauma. What I will talk about is our emotions.
Mm.
The trauma is held into in our body through emotions, and so a lot of times we hold it so strongly because we're avoiding them so deeply. So so I just start talking about just emotions in day to day life. So it could be I feel hurt by someone today. It could be like this much hurt, but how do I just sit with that little bit of how do I sit with the little bit of sadness or the little bit of anger that I have? So the more we can sit with the little bits, the more the easier it becomes to be able to sit with the larger amounts when they come up. I think of our particularly trauma is our body and our emotions have like a charge of battery, and the more the charge, the more they want to come out, the more they don't want to stay in our body. So knowing how to feel them means we learn how to let the charge out and release it, so we're not carrying the trauma anymore.
And so when people are sitting with that and they're holding those emotions, like what are some symptoms of that or what have you seen that how is that affecting their soul and their body?
Yeah, well, usually connection to our soul generally is a peaceful place to be.
Mm.
So when we have lack of peace, that's usually telling us we're less aligned with that part of us. Um, Part of being ourselves though means being okay to feel. So we can also be at peace with the feeling, not necessarily at peace in absence of the feeling too. So so generally the result of that disconnection is usually going to be a lack of peace, turmoil, it could be depression. So like having PTSD and getting stuck in that. The more we're in those things, it's showing us that we're actually less connected to our truth.
And so I like how you said that we can be in it and still feel it. We can be in, have the peace and still feel the emotion. And it's almost like accepting, not almost, but like accepting the emotion. Like you can have peace and accept the emotion of being hurt or being upset or being feeling, whatever feeling you're feeling and have peace and knowing like, okay, like I accept that this is how I feel without judging it. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, completely. The judgment really makes it so much worse. And how we think about the emotion in general is going to either help it pass through quicker or make us struggle more and keep recharging the battery.
Mm, yeah. So one of the things that part of radiant awakening is like coming into your identity, but also how when you come into that identity, you also can find like purpose and not like purpose like, you know, kind of more the commercialized purpose of, corporate ladder, things like that. That's not what you're talking about, but just um kind of finding more direction in life and a direction that feels peaceful and a direction that feels authentic to who we are. How have you seen, living that true self, how is that related to purpose for you?
Yeah. I think the first time I woke up, I think my thought was, I've got to save the world. And so then I pulled back a little bit. So that I think that was more the like, oh, now that I'm aware of this, everyone has to know this. So that was me getting too helpful. When I started really just sitting back in myself, purpose for me initially just meant finding things that felt enjoyable and pleasurable to me. It didn't have to mean being people at that moment. Just could have meant, well, today I feel purposeful to go for a walk today. I think sometimes people look at purpose and look too big for purpose. So like I have to volunteer and help people over there. And I'm not saying don't do that, but some purpose is really just about you and your well-being and your sense of peace is your purpose and living that. So for me, teaching and being a psychologist and teaching spiritually and doing the writing and creative stuff, for me, that's what feels very purposeful because it's just coming from the soul, from my heart.
Yeah. I love how you included the creativity. It's like once you connected your soul back to its authentic creative self, then you also were able to use that in something that you found meaning and purpose in. And you're talking about writing. You have a book, Waking Up to Yourself: A Guide to Living Your Truth. Tell us more about your book and more about how that relates to what we were discussing today.
And so in my book, Waking Up to Yourself, I've written it about, for me, I always thought that I had to awaken, fully awaken before I could find the peace. So I sort of went through a long journey of having lack of peace from that to then realize that peace is found in any given moment. And we want to find our highest level in any given moment. So really the book is about us understanding who we are, understanding our mind and how our mind doesn't always help us to have peace in every given moment. So there's strategies to cope with different emotions, understand the different thoughts that we have, so that at that specific present moment that we can find that peace within and live our truth in that moment.
Yeah, definitely. That's so helpful. I think so many times we're kind of running through life without that awareness, then without the awareness of self, without awareness of purpose, without awareness of others. And we're just kind of going through these motions and kind of sleepwalking. So I love the idea of waking up because we're kind of sleepwalking through life. And then when we
Yes.
wake up, we're like, oh, this is the only life that I have. I'm the only self that I get. And I need to understand myself and who am I? What am I doing? What is this? What is this experience that I'm having? And I love, the practical parts of like a guide to being able to do that. Because a lot of people are like, okay, you're saying wake up to yourself. What does that mean? How do I do that? And so that's really helpful to have a guide to be able to say, okay, this is what you can do to have this awakening.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I wrote it really from understanding my own pitfalls as well. So it's the practical guide that I used myself, where I finally discovered myself as I did that.
Yeah. So tried and true methods.
Yeah.
Awesome. I am curious about how waking up to yourself, how you how that allows you to connect to other people, or if it allows you to connect to other people, and how that affects your relationships.
So it can affect it in numerous ways. So generally, the more deeply awakened to yourself you are, I think the more compassion you have for everyone else. But compassion doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a punching bag. So so in that regard, it might mean that, say for me, I was always a very easygoing person. And some of that easygoingness I realized was avoidance. I hadn't realized that until I realized that. So now some people actually think I'm more difficult than I used to be because now I speak up a little bit more. I speak my truth a little bit more. I say no more. I set more boundaries. Some people, it's the opposite. Some people, right now, they're just, uh, their boundaries are way too strong and come up way too quickly. So their truth might be, just sit back in this a little bit. Let's just hear it out a little bit. No, then maybe they're not after me so much. So, so it generally can also mean you might be more brave as well. So a lot of times anxiety gets in the way, fear gets in the way of living our truth. So we might just be doing things that we were always scared of, but now just feel quite easy.
Yeah. I love how you brought up that people don't always adjust into our true selves right away. If they're used to who we were, now they have to adjust to who we are now, and living our more authentic self and getting to know um us as we are. And how does one navigate that of kind of changing, not, I shouldn't say changing, but coming back to their true self, and other people in their life and their relationships looking differently because of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to navigate that, there's different ways. So sometimes it would just be being yourself, and some people will fall off the wayside. I think the people close to you in particular, they generally want to see us happy and content and living our truth generally. So sometimes coaching them to recognize that I have changed. I have recognized these things about myself, and that before, while I thought I was being content, some of these things I don't like anymore. And I'm just going to let you know about them, not to be argumentative, just so that we can work together better as the new me, or the connected me.
Yeah. So I hear you saying, like, kind of setting those boundaries. I love how you put that, because it's not to be difficult when you set boundaries. It's like, I say, like, being able to tell someone how to better be in your life and how you can show up better in theirs. And
Yeah,
a lot of times that feels really uncomfortable for people, like, oh, I don't know if I can tell this friend that I don't like this or I don't like that. But if that's something that's going to help your friendship and help you to actually, like, be around this person more, then that's going to help everything, instead of, oh, I'm going to set a boundary and they're not going to want to be in my life. And that might happen. Like you said, some people will fall away, but those are the people that authentically weren't maybe meant to be in your life.
that's right. And I really found for me that certain people just more naturally fell away, and certain people will come way closer.
Mhm.
So there's always the benefit you do get from doing that, even if people do fall away.
Yeah. Um, I think one thing I've heard just with clients and things like that is, if people really knew the real me, they wouldn't like me. That's a big hurdle I think a lot of people have. What would you say to someone who kind of has that belief, and being able to kind of work through that belief to be able to put themselves out there more authentically?
Yeah. So usually if someone's saying that, what they're really saying is, I don't like myself or own things. And so really, that I would really look at, well, why don't, like, our true self loves every part of us and accepts every part of us. So then we look at, what did your conditioning learn to hate about you? So generally, one would be anger, would be when I'm an angry person, or so I'm too annoyed. So we've learned to make that a bad part of us, or I'm too weird might be something. And then we would want to learn how to accept those parts of ourselves, because we're more accepting of those parts of ourselves, then we're less caring whether someone else accepts it or not.
Mm,
Accepting doesn't mean we have to always do it, but accepting means that I acknowledge that that's within me as well.
yeah. No, I like that. I'm like, gonna sit with that for a second, and then yeah. Um, so what they're really saying is, I don't like that part of myself, not other people won't like it, but understanding that they don't like that part of themselves, and sitting with that and accepting that it's a part of themselves, and honoring that. I love it. That's great. Anything else that's on your mind, or that you wanted to bring up today?
Yeah. So I think even going a little bit further into that is that if we say I've got hazel eyes, if I'm okay with my hazel eyes, then someone's opinion of my hazel eyes aren't going to bother me. So but if I think, oh, my eyes just aren't the nice color, that the perfect color that people like, then I'll be very self-conscious going out publicly about that. So so it really does, the things that we're okay with in ourselves don't bother us in other people. The things we're not okay with is the things we worry other people are going to see in us. And And really, the more we can love ourselves and embrace those parts of us, the more free we are to live our truth.
Yeah. I I find it interesting. There are features of my face that I grew up being a little bit uncomfortable with, just kind of growing up, until I saw them on my children. And I saw them on my children, and I'm like, that is the cutest thing ever. And it's so beautiful. And my husband would be like, they got it from you. And I'm like, oh, like it's so
Yeah.
interesting when you see it from a different perspective or a different lens. Um, and just having, I think we have this sense of compassion and acceptance for other people sometimes that we don't always have for ourselves. And one thing that is helpful, I think, a lot of times, um, is to kind of even look at ourselves as you would someone else. Like, okay, well, if I were someone else looking at me, or if I were looking, how to like try to, if I were looking at myself the way I look at other people, would I judge so harshly? Would I be so critical? Or would I be more accepting and loving? Because why am I being so mean to this entity, which is self, but why am I being so mean to this entity when I wouldn't be that mean to another person? Have you
Right.
seen
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, completely. And that when we're doing that, that's when we're really lost in our conditioning and really disconnected from our true self. So part of my book, what I've written in there is I've written a whole section about self-love. And what I call self-love, I call self-love the voice of the true self. So when our true self looks at us, it doesn't judge us, it loves us, it accepts us, it's respectful, it speaks respectfully to us. We're able to advocate, it looks after us, it also appreciates us too. It doesn't just only be okay, it really celebrates us. And when we can do that for ourselves, and some of us are very scared to do that because we feel like we're going to be too not humble enough, we're going to be too conceited if we look at ourselves that way. And and this isn't about saying we're better than anyone, but it is just about celebrating who we are as a person because it is there to do that.
Absolutely. You're talking about fully accepting yourself. What if there is a part of yourself that you do want to like change, and not because of conditioning, like you accept that this is a part of you, and you also want to do something different. Just
Yep.
you see a characteristic or a quality in someone, you're like, I want that. Like that calls to me. I want to be. I see this person, and they're really gracious. They just thank everybody. They're just wonderful people, and I want to be more like that. Is there a balance of like acceptance and change?
Yeah, definitely. I always suggest start at acceptance though,
Mm.
because you can change yourself from hate. So it might be I want to lose weight because I hate my body. Um, it's not really the best motivator. It's not a very genuine, authentic motivator. So it might be, can I love my body first? And then in my truth, I still want to develop those things. I still want to be healthier and I still want to add that, but I do it from a more gentle, loving place. So even being gracious is, yes, it's great to be gracious, but if someone's just saying, I'm grateful for everything and they're just doing in that all the time, you're going to annoy everyone. So, so there's a time where like maybe it's just okay to be okay with what's there, not having to like fully appreciate every little thing at every given moment. And it's not one or the other.
Yeah. But I love how you put that, like starting with the acceptance, and then you can move on to a change from a loving place. I love that.
Yeah.
Where can listeners and viewers find your book?
Yes, they can find it on Amazon and online bookstores. It's also available on audiobook, and I narrate that myself. And it's also on my website, patrickmarando.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today and all of your wisdom. Is there one last piece of wisdom that you'd like to leave with us?
I think it would be that to just come back to yourself at every moment you can. Just practice that. You can practice that in any like what you're eating for lunch, the way you drive to work. The more you just see what's motivating that and finding the difference between your conditioning and your truth, and you can connect to your truth at any time. You don't have to wait till you're fully awakened to live your truth. You can do that all the time.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your time today. And I just really appreciate everything that you've shared with us.
And my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Sierra. It's been wonderful meeting you.